Rich Schmidt. We're here with Vincent Rolleri, July 22nd, 2025, on the backside of Durant Vineyard here in Dayton. And Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
First question, as you know, is why wine?
Why wine? Well, I mean, the honest answer is, for many years, I didn't really give myself the opportunity to ask that because I jumped in head first. Day after high school, I found myself in forklift training at a blueberry farm out in outside of Sheridan. So my idea there was get forklift certified and kind of train up before I jump into my first wine harvest that September. Mm-hmm. So I graduated high school in 2013. And as I said, it was like June 8th or something like that, June 9th, I was at this blueberry farm it was a cooling unit. So basically, after the blueberries were harvested, packaged, they were in this cooler ready to ship out. And my job was to get them on a truck and out of there. It was an interesting job to have when you never work. Like, I had a paper route. That was it. Jumping into the job field like that, working with some interesting characters for sure. Is a little bit of a culture shock, but I'm glad I did it because, like I said, when you're 18, trying to cut your teeth into an industry that, at the time especially, there wasn't a lot of youthful interest into it. And so, I didn't go to school for it yet. Like I said, just out of high school, and so I needed some sort of experience that kind of gets their attention. So yeah, I worked there the summer, and then that September I ended up in Dundee, Oregon, working at 12th Maple Winery. But kind of to go back before we go into the history, so to answer your question, why wine? I think it really scratched an itch of admiration of identity, legacy, and maybe history. My name Rolleri, it's a very old Italian name, and pretty recently found out it actually, like most old names, they kind of have a connection to some sort of specific craft or trade, and it comes from the Latin word rollo, which was basically discussing, it was barrel makers. Learned that maybe a year ago. But specifically like wine cask barrels, and so all these little kind of hints in my life have kind of developed this kind of admiration of history and legacy and tradition. And I think that has caught my attention and my kind of sense of involvement in the craft, right? Over time, obviously, this has just expanded. It's like this year will be my 12th vintage overall, which is, like I said, I started right out the gate at 18, so it's just turned 30 this year, and it feels pretty good to have the amount of experience that I have in this industry, like living in it, breathing in it, growing up in it. Yeah, I think that's why wine. It really kind of at the depths of it is like kind of this sense of identity. It's not just a livelihood or a craft that I'm trying to constantly just be excellent at. Every winemaker is kind of faced with this sense of like, maybe they have 40 good vintages, to make a perfect wine, and I'm definitely in it for that purpose. But I think it kind of in the inside of me, it's this connection to something, and it's a pretty ethereal answer, but I think that it's an important part of it to me. Yeah, kind of going back into the history of where it started. I was talking to my wife, Allison, about this recently because obviously, it's a big deal, the wine archive. It's like it kind of again, like kind of scratches that itch of being a part of this this community, this history. And so for me, that's very exciting because it's like, that this industry is only as good as the people that make it up. And so giving homage to these people that have collaborated in it, built it from the ground up, and now the younger generation coming into it and expanding upon it, it's really cool to kind of see that happening, and having it in some sort of historical documentation. But I was talking to my wife about doing this interview, and I started kind of recollecting a little bit of just like where it started, and I was thinking about this fifth grade paper that I did. So I grew up in McMinnville, so I'm a Oregon boy through and through, and just grew up in this area. We moved here from southeast Portland when I was 5, and haven't had the insane desire to leave permanently since. And I think it's because my imagination was really captured here. And so I was in fifth grade, I was working on some sort of project. I think it was sort of like a 5-year plan, but it's how do you see your life? Which is a really crazy question to be asking a fifth grader. And you got your doctors, I want to be an astronaut or a firefighter. And I don't remember the career aspects of it, but I remember drawing in this this book, the little journal almost, and I remember drawing these pictures of really rudimentary, I was still, I'm not an artist for sure, in terms of drawing. So it was these really rudimentary vineyards, and it was just this idea captured, or this imagination captured by this concept of I want to live in a vineyard, I want to be in that, I want to be surrounded by that. And I don't even think I really knew that Oregon was a established wine industry. I mean, that was 2000, 2001. Excuse me, it would have been 2006. Even then, it was still growing. I mean, we really have made a lot of leaps and bounds in the last 15 years, insane amounts of growth. So I, as a fifth grader, definitely didn't know that was a possibility here. But it was cool to kind of have that memory in such a vague form, but knowing that it was going through my brain. And then through middle school, I remember then I jumped to this story of talking with my wife about my friend's mom. She was kind of this very, holistic hippie gal, and it was the first time I come across kombucha. I remember she'd give it to her son, Jeremiah, and she'd give it to him with breakfast, and I was over there one morning for breakfast, and she gave me a glass, and I remember trying it, and it was like vinegar. I mean, this was some strong health food kombucha. And I asked what it was. I was like, that's disgusting. What did you just give me? And so they started showing me the SCOBY, if you're familiar with, those things. I mean, it is a fermentation occurring, when you're developing your kombucha, but it's born from this colony, and so I got that kind of, triggered some interest in kind of what fermentation is conceptually. I, didn't quite understand it, at the time. And then in high school, I started actually making my own kombucha. It was very fun. I started drinking it every morning, considering I hated it at first. But me and my friends started, we're 15, 16, and you start experimenting a little bit. And we're like, well, I can't go to the store and buy wine. I can't, that kind of thing. But we realized that, you buy some Welch's organic grape juice and you grab some yeast that you get at the store. No one's checking an ID for that. I mean, this might have happened, but basically making our own wine there in our, we had this little room in the back of my friend Jesse's house, and we basically spent every day there just hanging out. But we had this little cupboard, and it was just multiple bottles of this literal Welch's organic. We got the organic one. So that was it was important to us to start with the best, and then ferment it and make a wine that tasted like garbage, and then from there we learned how to freeze distill it, so you can make it stronger and mix it with all sorts of tasty juices. And so yeah, that was like 15, 16, and then that I think is like really like as a science, that's where it kind of became born. It's like 15, 16 years old, 17 years old in high school. That's right. It was like taking some organic chemistry classes, so you can understand it from just not just a sort of an ornery teenager kind of point of view of what it is as a substance, but understanding something scientifically has happened here. There's the art and science of it. The art point I don't think was quite clicked in yet, but there's some science to it. Okay, we have a science experiment. So yeah, I mean, I finished out high school, we were doing that. It was really just kind of like, I was exploring the world, and like, in a way that it was really, tactile. And I remember, I think it was the summer of 2011, because as I mentioned, like my dad, he's from Italy originally. He moved out here in 1993, and I was born a couple years later. But I mean, his kind of side note, like his story. It's a good opportunity to tell my mom and dad's story because it is a funny one. So my dad grew up in just north of Parma in this little town called Travo, along the Trebbia River. The Trebbia Valley is one of the most beautiful places. If I was asked to like kind of meditate a little bit on a beautiful place, I think I'd put myself right there, standing on the bridge going into this town, because there's one entrance into Travo, and it's just across this little old bridge. So he grew up there, and his dad was a tailor, and he had his vision of the future was to be a priest. It's a small town living, in the middle of Italy, but like all things, music and culture kind of jumps across the pond, and he was obsessed with Billy Idol, and he had this big poster. He's still at my grandma's house. There's still the poster there, this poster of Billy Idol above his bed, which is just hilarious. But his favorite was Bruce Springsteen. Classic American man, New Jersey, Italian American, like, that captured the imagination of an Italian teen. And so, he just loved culturally, like, what the U.S. kind of exported over there. And so, in his mid-20s, his dad, my grandfather, my nonno, Giovanni, that's where my middle name comes from, he had passed away, and so that kind of pushed my dad to kind of do something drastic. And so he found a listing of some sort, and he found this student exchange program, San Diego, California. And one thing that he learned from American music, as per the Ramones, is that the California girls are the most beautiful girls on earth. And so he's like, I'm going to San Diego, California. And so he went there and was met by a fine host of people that he became friends with. And one of those people, who was the tour guide, was my mom, Tammy. So my dad's name is Itala, and my mom's name Tammy. And she was the tour guide, and so they became friends, obviously, through that journey. And a couple years go by, and next thing you know, they're in love. And it becomes revealed that she wasn't a California girl. She was from Southeast Portland. And so maybe he was a little bit disappointed, but I think he was excited to have the attention of my mom. So he came back out here, and next thing you know, they're getting married in the Rose Garden in Portland, and shortly after I arrived. So, going back forward, 2011, I took my first solo trip, because we went when I was younger, to visit my nonna. Obviously my grandfather, he was passed away at that point, but there was still my aunt, my dad's sister, cousins, things like that. So we went when I was an infant up until about 5 years old, and a huge lapse. In 2011, I expressed interest, I want to go. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't an option for my whole family to go, because I have two younger brothers, and it's expensive. So I asked, I want to go by myself. I'm has just turned 15, which I think is a good age. They were obviously a little concerned, like, you know, I'm still their baby boy, wanting to go travel across by himself, but they let me, and I went over there and spent, it was a little too long to be going by yourself somewhere. And, you know, if you remember the timeline I gave you with my dad, like visiting Italy and then basically moving here permanently, he was learning English while I was learning how to speak. And so there wasn't a lot of flexibility or a lot of bandwidth for him to be teaching somebody else Italian while he's trying to kind of give up that language a little bit and learn a new one. So I still don't speak Italian very well, but you know, I think it was about 8 or 9 weeks. It was a long time in the summer of 2011, and it was incredible. It was an incredible experience for me to create a sense. I mean, I'm the oldest son, so obviously, like, I have kind of a heightened sense of responsibility that is kind of required to be a good older brother, and, you know, keep your parents like happy and stuff. But, you know, just taking care of myself and like being responsible for yourself. You know, you have a sense of responsibility to your parents for making a good representation of yourself to your family. So it was just like a very advancing stage step in my life. And got back from there, and I thought I was walking on cloud 9, you know, like I came back from Europe, like, you know, I got to tell all of my friends from school about it, and it's just an exciting time. And I remember just all through the rest of high school, it was just like this idea of, I need to get out of here. Like, I don't want to be here anymore in McMinnville. You know, this is where I was raised, and I just saw like all these cool things. You know, we went out to Como, we went to Rome. You know, we went on some good trips during that summer, and it felt very foundational. So, yeah, I mean, like, I guess kind of keeping it connected with my wine journey, like, got back and like started kind of playing around with that experimentally. And I think, you know, we didn't like go to vineyards or anything like that. I tried wine at dinner, like when I was there, but I don't think it's still quite clicked, like, as like a potential of a craft, you know. I just knew that this was my people kind of thing. This is history, and this is my family, and like this is important to us, like the concept of, you know, these long dinners, and just dining with each other and confiding with each other and enjoying it with wine and food. So get back home, play around with my little winemaking experiments. You know, I was dicking around quite a bit. Like, it was just like, it's still a teenager, so it wasn't like I had my head on completely straight. But I think I was like just shy of 17, and I met this lovely girl named Allison Lake, who now we've been married 6 years. So I wouldn't describe myself as like a distracted person, or like an obnoxious person, but, you know, I needed some rigidity and some planning in my life, you know, a vision to kind of keep me on track. And I think the two things that kind of put me on like a really cool course was, you know, having this intense fascination with something that I was aware enough or like kind of mindful enough that like, hey, there's perspective here. And then also meeting my wife at such a young age, like, you know, and she is one of the smartest, like, you know, disciplined people I've ever met. And so I think, I don't want to say demanded, but like, I knew I needed to give her like a certain amount of focus, not just my attention on her, but, you know, focus in my life. Because a good future is kind of built from that, right? And so, yeah, I guess get through the rest of high school, and then, you know, I was I was really into culinary arts. And so there's, again, I think kind of keeping with this idea of like food and wine, like it's just like the beautiful things, you know, that romanticism of the Italian lifestyle. I never consciously admitted it, but it was just like, it was very apparent, you know, and so I was like really into culinary arts, and like McMinnville High School was really cool about like career pathway stuff. It was a graduation requirement, and so I was on like the culinary team, and, you know, there's a lot of interest on my end too, but, you know, when we were applying for colleges, I applied for a culinary school, and OSU amongst others, slightly even thinking about their wine program. But I remember this, we had to cook this lunch for like a bunch of donors for the program. I made a really nice meal for them. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm sure it was good. It was a really talented group of people, considering we were like 18 and like kind of chef aspiring individuals. And we had we came out to the guests and like introduced ourselves, said our name and kind of what our hope for the future, or where we're going next, kind of thing. And I remember, you know, up to that point, I like applied for a culinary school out on the coast, and like I was kind of like, you know, doing the high school college thing. That was what I was gonna do, at least for now. And all my classmates, they're saying like, "Oh, I'm going to Cordon Bleu, blah blah blah," and it gets to me, and I'm like, you know, it's like this like a really split second decision. And I was like, I'm gonna go make wine. Like, it was just like a very matter of fact, like, my name's Vincent Rolleri, and after high school, I'm gonna go make wine, which is a really weird thing to hear from an 18-year-old, I'm sure, for some of those people. And it was, at that point, I was a little surprised I had said it. And, you know, walking away from that, I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm gonna do. So graduate high school, awesome graduation party. We did it's like a grad night. So like we like went to, I forget where, somewhere out like in Corvallis, and stayed up all night, got back to the high school at like 3:30, because they like bussed us in and out. We knew it was an all-nighter thing. My parents knew and stuff. But got back home at 3:30. I slept for 2 hours, and then drove to that blueberry farm, Hurstberry Farm in Sheridan, Oregon, for the training. And so I was on like 2 hours of sleep, maybe. And they got the job, passed the test, and did that. And so 2013 was my first harvest.
That was at 12th and Maple.
That was at 12th and Maple, correct. And that was a hell of a year. And so, yeah, I don't know how many people, like other winemakers, are watching other winemakers' videos for this thing, but if anyone in this area remembers that year, it was shitty. Like, it was just not fun. You know, I remember lugging, you know, just small memories from it, like, you know, lugging 50-pound sacks of, or they were probably the 25-pounders, 25-pound sacks of sugar, but then also simultaneously bringing up bags of tartaric. So it's like, it was just like crazy. I think it was making everyone question what was going on. But for a lot of winemakers in the area, they kind of regard it as like the last true Oregon sort of vintage. I think primarily because of that rain during the actual harvesting. I mean, it was like the summer itself was really warm. So it was just wild. And, you know, again, going back to that culture shock that I experienced, just having a first job with a bunch of, you know, grown men like that are like, you know, have lives, have families, that take their time very seriously. You know, I was definitely getting screamed at a lot. The boss was kind of a curmudgeon man, but I probably deserved it at times. And then going into this space where it was like, and we could talk about that later, but just like this evolution of mentality, it was still very much in this idea. It's like, we live here now, and you live here, and you're sick? Like, what? Like, no. Like, we'll see you at work tomorrow kind of thing. Like, you know, it's very high octane. And like being at a facility that big too, it's like you had to be. You know, at the time, they've grown so much since then. I think it was like I think it was like 4,000 tons or 3,800 or something like that. I remember I had like in my mind's eye like this whiteboard that had the current tonnage we had processed. But it was a bigger winery for the time, and still is one of the bigger wineries in terms of raw processing. And it was hard because I had to get over the fact that here's a really side-railing story, but I remember that I was applying for a job actually when I was 16. It was at the movie theater, and I remember interviewing for the position, and she said something about what's your availability on holidays, basically like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I was like I mean, it's Christmas. Like, what do you mean? Like, we work on Christmas? And I didn't get the job. I didn't answer that like coarsely, but it was like there was kind of like just a very obvious ignorance in my eyes of like what your expectations are. And so I was a very happy-go-lucky kid, So I think there's still some of that like kind of left over by the time I'm working this harvest, and that harvest like burnt it out of me. Like, we're here, we're working our asses off, and we got to get the job done. And so I remember, this is an embarrassing part of the story, but I was asking my wife, I was like, should I tell that part too? I remember maybe about, we were like on like day 45, like nonstop, like 14, 15-hour days. And I remember I was still living at my parents', and I get home. I was working graveyard too, which is even more of a. And day 45, I get home from my shift, and I walk into the house, and my mom's asking how I'm doing, and my room was like up these set of stairs, like a big bonus room. So I had like the biggest bedroom I think anyone's ever had, like because it was just a bonus room. It was supposed to be like an entertainment room, but I turned it my own. It was great. Miss that house. So I remember I laid on the stairs. My mom asked how I'm doing, and it was like, I wasn't sad, but I literally started crying, but it was like these kind of just like, I'm not emotional, I'm just so tired. Like, I just remember crying to my mom, and like that was just wild to me to think about after all these years, because it was rough. I mean, I'll be honest, it was just, I did not have fun that year because of just like that intensity. But there's one thing that made it easier, and I kind of left that out of the story, like why I ended up at 12th and Maple. So Tom Small, he was the winemaker there for many years. There's like multiple of them that kind of represented this custom crush facility and had kind of their given brands that they were kind of delegating for. He was the father. He is the father of one of my close friends, Tommy Small. He's doing great things over at Argyle. Runs a tight ship there. So Tommy was the one that mentioned to me hey, my dad works at a winery. And I was like, really? That's what I was wanting to do. I made that decision in front of a bunch of donors for my culinary arts class. I have to do it now. And he's like, let's go do Harvest in September. And I was like, I'm in. So that's how I ended up there. And so there was I at least had a good friend with me who was kind of participating in this new experience. We were kind of the rugrat. I mean, we were rugrats. Everyone was 30 plus, and they were just these fresh faced, and just delinquents in a lot of ways. As despite of how hard it was, it was a really intense learning opportunity, and I do think that I absorbed it as such. I do remember moments of really kind of digging into it mentally, and not looking at it entirely negatively. So I kind of started it off with just crying in front of my mom about how terrible it was going. Actually, speaking of sick days, that year, that was where I learned that it was kind of how high the expectations are during the harvest season. Because Tom, my friend Tommy's dad, I called him, he didn't answer, and so I texted him, and I said basically I was sick, Like how extreme, it's debatable, but I was not feeling good, probably just tired. But I texted him saying like, hey, I'm sick, like I gotta stay home. And all he texts me back is that I'm gonna need a doctor's note from you when you get here. And then I was just like, well, it's not, we started texting back and I'm like, well, it's not not a warrants going to the doctor, like how sick I am. And so he's like, a note from your mom will suffice. And I laughed. I knew it was a joke. So I show up the next day, and I had forgotten, like, because my car was broken down or something. So my mom had to actually drive me to work that day. And I had kind of forgotten about it, but I obviously didn't take him super seriously on that request. So there was this magazine in the car, and I remember it was a See's Candy ad. And so I ripped it out. I was like, Mom, can you write a sick note for me on this? And I brought it in. I got into work and went into his office and I handed it to him. And he's like, what is this? And he's like, I mean, he has a great sense of humor, but very scary at face value. Very intense guy. He looked at it and he just starts cracking up. And as from what he's told me, he still has that note to this day. So he thought it was really funny. And I think I got like kind of a little bit of a breakthrough of kind of interacting with people that, are intense about their work, but, why they're there. I think there's still humor and love for what they're doing, So anyway, that was my first harvest, 2013. So following that harvest, I was, at that point, I think they had offered me a full-time position, but I was still kind of hem-hawing at the idea of how much I liked it, or wanted, at least maybe there, because it was like big, and I thought maybe about other places, Oh, I just remembered a story from a conversation that I had with Tom, and one of the other winemakers there, Michael Collier, who I really wish I could have worked more closely with him, because he was really sharp, like really intelligent winemaker and like super talented. There's a lot of cool people there. But I remember we were standing outside and I was like just soaking wet. It's like cleaning bins like for the last 8 hours. Like we dump them into the big hopper, and then obviously somebody had the pressure wash, and that was my job, pressure wash, Mr. Clean. And Michael's over there looking at some of the fruit, and Tom's standing over there next to me, probably like just teasing me or something. And he's like, Michael, come over here. Have you met Vinny? And he's like, oh no, I haven't. He comes over and I introduce myself, and he's like, Michael, did you know Vinny wants to be a winemaker? And then he kind of like has this like shit-eating grin on his face, and Michael's like, why the hell would you do that? And I remember too, all the time when he was having a bad day, Michael would always be like, I would do anything just to be working down the street at that Arco right now. Like he was always talking about that Arco gas station, and he did not. Yeah, he had a really his position like carried a lot of stress. So I can understand that and trust the sentiment. But he loved what he did. I know that. But anyway, so I was it was towards the tail end of harvest, and we had already organized kind of my last day. And I decided, like probably a week or two before that last day, that I was going to go to Ukraine with my good friend, one of my best friends, still this day one homie. Met him when I was 11, still super close to this day, and we were going to go to Ukraine together that December. And that was kind of like my reintegration into this fascination with traveling. Wine was still like, that was cool. That was a great experience, but I have a big bag of money now that I never had before, because all that overtime and no time to spend it. I'm gonna get out there in the world. So we went over to Ukraine for close to 2 months. Ukraine, Hungary, and that was a cool experience. I mean, it was right before the height of the Maidan Revolution, so it was a very politically interesting time to be there. and a very maturing time for me, because like at that point I hadn't turned 19 yet, so I was still 18 years old, and you're in a country with like very heavy drinking culture and a lot of freedom for just getting involved in all sorts of weird stuff, and at the same time this like political like upheaval is occurring, and so it was a very maturing time for me. Met a lot of cool people. Actually met the band. I stayed in a hostel with just this band that won, was it the
Eurovision?
Eurovision. They won Eurovision in like 2015 or 16, and we were in this small hostel in Lvov, in the west side, and it was in the middle of winter, and it was just us and them, and like they're like, oh yeah, we're in a band, and they showed us some songs. Like I remember the guitar player was like insisted that I watch this cover of Wonderwall sung by a bunch of soccer hooligans. So we were just like singing Wonderwall in the middle of this empty hostel. It was an incredible experience. Met a lifelong friend there, Max, who's from Odessa, and so did that for about 2 months, came back, and I got an email like maybe a week or two after, maybe it was like a month, it was like inching into springtime, from Tom Small asking if I wanted to come back. And it was, I think I also still didn't admire the fact that like emails, you should respond quickly. And I wasn't used to answering emails, so I'm surprised I even checked my email at the time to find that email from him. But he asked me to come back, and I was like, hey, it's really cool that they thought, because it was, like I said, it was a tough vintage. Everyone was really fiery. And I think I took it at the time, probably took a lot of like just intensity as like this like personal attack, and so it kind of made me a little weary, kind of scared, to be honest, just like a little boy, just a kid, so I went. I think that summer in like June or July, I finally said I'd love to come back. I made the decision. I'm going to do this. I need to try it twice. Even at the same place, because I mentioned like thinking somewhat about other places, but I wanted to try it again because I think it was important for me to show that I could tackle something like that. That was very hard. So I came in, did bottling, so I got to see some of the summer operations, and then went into harvest, and then that year was really cool. First reason being that not only was Tom's son, he came back too, but we ended up recruiting basically the core of some of our friend group in high school. So that cellar team was majority 19-year-old boys that all knew each other from high school and acted as such. So it was me, Tommy, Pedro, who he's at RP now, so he's in the vineyard side of things, and then Felix, who's still at 12th Maple and doing he's a great guy. And so it was, the four of us, and I think there's some other people. Oh yeah, Clayton, he's at Argyle now too. So it's just this rugrat crew, and like we were still up to our hijinks, and like didn't have kind of like a lot of basic conceptualizations that you would as an adult, or like at least being in the workforce, and it was silly, and I feel bad sometimes thinking back about some of the people that were like my age, like my age now, they were then, like what they were thinking of what they were dealing with, like, and at the time, like, it didn't even faze me. But so we do that harvest, and it was really fun. We had a really fun time, and it was a lot easier. That was kind of like the first first vintage of this stretch of just like basically babysitting like great grapes. They come in, you do a little bit of chemistry adjustments, but not much, and you're making some really pretty wines, talking to people that a lot of my peers, like that was some of the first years that they arrived here. I mean, I know Spencer even, I think it was either 14 or 15. But it was during like these Goldilocks years, and so he didn't experience like 13 and like know what. And now we've kind of seen some years that were similar, yeah, it was just like this string of just awesome vintages, and so we had a great harvest, and I again continued to mature both personality wise, but now starting to kind of see a little bit of the connective tissue amongst these processes, understanding, tannin chemistry, just at least somewhat, what makes a wine gritty. I remember having a conversation with David Philo, who, as far as I know, still is back in Texas. He was our cellar master. I'd put him down as like probably at least in the top 15, like, he's probably in the top 10, like people that like really kind of chiseled away a little bit, like kind of helped really form me as like somebody functioning in this industry. He was so patient, so kind with this like rugrat crew, because following that 2014 harvest, all the full-timers that stayed, barring one, were the rugrats. Like, it was the kids. And so it was it was like 4,500 tons a year. Like, winery was being operated by a handful of kids that were all very sharp people individually, but just not quite there yet. And somebody like David Philo, who had, like, represented like the definition of like patience and reasonable kindness. I remember he got mad at me once, but that was scary, and because you're not used to those people. Like that are really important, I think, at moments like that in one's life, because it meant something to me when he was upset. And so, but I remember him like, we had this conversation, like we were talking about, like what kind of wines do you like, Vinny? He asked me, or something like that. And I was like, I really like wines that just feel like super, I don't know how to describe it, just like strong, like kind of kick you a little bit. Not in terms of alcohol, but just had this aggressive nature to them. And he's like, maybe what you're talking about is tannins. And I'm like, what's tannins, Philo? And so, little moments like that is like, and it kind of, I was listening a little bit more. I was less distracted by just the fact I was tired and this is all new and a little bit overwhelmed, and still having somewhat like some childish tendencies, to be honest. And so, we all stuck around, and then all of us together like went through a whole vintage together, and ultimately, I'm trying not to skip over any great stories from there, but ultimately stayed there until 2016, like January. Tail end of January, because after harvest 2015, me and Tommy went to Southeast Asia for 2 months. And that was also, again, one of those, it was purely extracurricular. Went to 4 different countries, and just kind of, I'm going to say it because I like the cliche, found myself. But, just kind of like, I was, 20, I was just shy of 21. We came back, and I was, turned 21. And so, just like now I'm in, like, I wasn't at Nona's house in Italy. Like, I was just on my own, interacting with people from all over the world. I mean, it's a very touristy area, and meeting people, having to figure out how to like deal with it if you got your passport stolen at a passport crossing check between Cambodia and Vietnam.
It's a very specific example.
little things like that. It was just like kind of like a moment to check yourself, I guess. And so that was really fun. And he came back, and I was like, kind of. I remember in 2015. Yeah, 2015. I started. I was like, it was the very beginning of 2015, or maybe the fall. Can't remember. At some point in 2015, I'm pretty sure it was that winter term. I made the decision, like, I like this. I'm serious about this. I want to keep doing this. And so I enrolled in classes through Schmidt wine program. I'm sure I'm skipping over something, but I remember there being a very specific shift of like, I really care about this. And maybe that's where some of the first kind of thoughts about kind of the art aspect of it. And like, like when people, because I waited a couple years before I went to school for it, I remember thinking like, I have questions going into this. I'm not going there to like be taught something that I haven't really thought about. Like I have all these questions. And so it made school, like the process for me, like pretty, not easy, but productive. So yeah, I rolled in there, and I remember having a difficult time like trying to balance work and going back to school. It just, their schedule off, like what the winery, like upper management was willing to offer us a little bit. It just didn't work. Like it would have taken forever, and I was really wanting to get this done, and not just get it done, but like have some focus on it. And like my direct bosses, Tom and Michael and stuff like that, like they really supported like me. Like they were almost excited for me. I mean, like I mentioned Michael, like asked me like, why the hell would you want to do that? He did see, I remember having conversations with him, like, and he's asking me how school's going. Like, am I enjoying it? And like, am I learning? This is where I think they like gave up kind of this annoyance with like having this Rugrat crew, and like actually kind of started to believe that this is the future, and like all of those people are still working in the wine industry, and I think all very talented people. So they clenched on, they keyed in on that, and I really am grateful to them for giving the encouragement and pointing direction during that time. But like I said, I went to that trip in Thailand and Cambodia and Vietnam and stuff, and got back, and I was like, there's more, again, the art and science kind of concept that we always talk about. Like there's things I'm missing. I'm in this big square building that's gray, and we're making a lot of wine and making some good wines too. And a big facility, like I think people automatically like assess like smaller wineries as being more capable of quality, and I did not see that to be the case. They were making exceptional wines there. And so it was a good place to learn, but it was like, I think most of all at that stage of my life, like a good place to learn the process really well, because you're having to do it over and over and over again, because there's so much volume to do it. So, at least the basics, the foundation, what does it look like, And so, but I knew that I needed to kind of broaden it a little bit, but my first sort of goal was to finish school. So I left there at the beginning of 2016, and my roommates at the time, Matthew and Mark, their older sister, she was the tasting room manager here at Durant, and I told them that I was thinking about leaving, and like I kind of need another job, and they're like, oh, there's a winery tasting room job available, her sister works there. I'm like, okay, cool, that should actually work. And because I talked to Christina, and like, it just gave me flexibility. Like I could take all my classes full time, get like focus on that, and still have a job, make some money, and stay in the wine industry, which was very important to me. At least see another side of it, stay involved. And at that point I was finally 21, which is a very important factor in terms of exploring wines. you could sneak yourself some occasionally, but and even from an educational perspective, but you're really not getting ingratiated into it, or like really getting deep into it. And so it was a great time and place to be. Like 2016 was a good year. I really enjoyed that year because it was just, it was like new. I was like, at that point I felt very I don't know, just comfortable in my identity a little bit. I think that was kind of, I mentioned that early on, like not just who I am in my career, but like, I don't know, I just felt like there's an era that had really shifted. And so I had my places I regularly went to. Flag and Wire is kind of the mecca. At that time was the mecca of just hanging out with young professionals. And, being 21 and like I found a lot of value in that, and seeing like faces from the wine industry being there all the time. I remember like Jason Lett would go through there a lot, and being able to talk with him. And I mean, like that guy comes from has legacy to his name and has continued to build something out of that legacy. And like having just like these small conversations with them. I mean, I remember one day he like brought in like a couple bottles of wine, and he's like, "Hey Vinny, do you want to try something?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he popped a bottle of wine and put it in a little glass, and I remember tasting it, and he's like, "What do you think's wrong with that?" Or like, "What do you think about that? Like, what's going on with that wine?" He didn't give me like any hints on it, and like I remember saying like I was really nervous too, because it's like he was like, kind of like a celebrity in my mind, a celebrity, or just like a rock star in the local sphere. And I was like, I think, is it like sour? Or like there's like something with the acidity. I mean, I don't think I was trying to give like a really vague answer just so I didn't sound wrong, but maybe subconsciously is what I was doing. But there's something with acidity. I remember that's all I said, and he's like, "That's pretty close. Like, it has a really elevated VA. It was like 1.1 if I remember correctly, or something like that." And then he told me like, usually above 0.7, like it has like more perceptibility, to the senses, like, and had that conversation. And I was like, "Oh, that was really cool." And then he walked out, and like, so it's like little interactions like that you just have at your like local watering hole, when you're caffeinated and extra sharp, so you're listening, and just long conversations, just like kind of just keeping very involved, because it's like, again, during that time where I'm like just going to school, away from the production side of things, and at that time still like learning, and so. Yeah, that was 2016. That was 2016 is like you said, is like a year to be remembered just from a personal growth perspective. But also like it's just like I made some steps to kind of advance my career in a direct, like with more. I kind of reduced the circle I'm trying to shoot for, kind of aim small, miss small type mentality. And, at that point I'm just working in the tasting room here at Durant, and, starting to build relationships here. If Durant is a very special place for me personally, but, from the history of Oregon, it's some of the oldest Pinot you're going to find on this hill. It was kind of those foundational families that started establishing vineyards out here. And I think most importantly, and like what I admire a lot, is the continuation of legacy through like familial involvement. So like Ken and Penny Durant, they came out here with, I think, very pure reasons, which is just like being in the dirt. There's like this sort of an anecdote to their love story, I guess, and it was like her one demand was that he buys her like a plot of dirt, a piece of land somewhere, because she comes from like a ranching family, and so she was used to that environment, that culture, and it was important to her. And So I mean, they came out here and found, like, looked around. I remember hearing these stories of like, you know, that the early days, just kind of the ignorance around what was to be. What they were looking at land, and all the valley floor stuff was like it was cost prohibitive. Like, it wasn't going to work out for them to find some land in the valley floor. So they started looking in the hills, and that was where it was affordable. And next thing you know, it's like it's the most valuable property in the state. And so now their son, like Paul, he's now the general manager and owner. Like, he's now taken the torch up. And you know, in the early days, obviously, like, in 2016, like, I admired the fact. It was really cool. He had only been here like probably 4 or 5 years too, up to that point. He wasn't back that long because he was an engineer, worked for like Hewlett Packard and stuff like that, but he wasn't back that long, so it was still new to him, I think, relatively. Like, he grew up on the property and did a lot with his family, but I think from like a business management perspective, like, maybe I think there's still some like kind of readjusting, like adjusting a work environment and going from Hewlett Packard to, like, you know, mom and pop, like family owned business with like people that represent themselves as such, you know, kind of very wholesome, not so corporate. But at the time, I don't think I noticed, but now it's like, has grown to be super important to me, because I think it's in line with my own values of like why I'm here, why I'm at Durant, but why I'm working in the Oregon wine industry, and why I believe in it, and why I do what I do, like why I continue to go through these hard vintages or these good vintages or these shitty parts of the job. Like, bottling's not fun. I think it was like sometime in like, because I think at first Paul was definitely not the friendliest with me, to be honest. With me, at least. yeah. And so there was like some tough barriers to get through. Just kind of like, I just remember thinking like, I don't know why, but I see a lot of value at the time in 2016, like when I first started working here. I see a lot of value being here, and I think there's a lot to learn probably from Paul Durant. I really need to work hard, and I think too, like, there was some amount of regret of how well I represented myself a little bit at 12th and Maple. I mean, I could blame like just like the, you know, childlike tendencies, like just being a teenager. But I was really ready to take myself seriously and take my life seriously. And again, like with the sort of support or sort of motivation from my now wife, you know, I want to take this seriously. Especially since I didn't decide immediately to like go to college like all my friends, you know. It was like at that point they're still living in Eugene, Corvallis, you know, Portland, like everyone kind of left. And I have the same basically 5 or 6 friends that I've had since I was 11 and love them to death. And they're all over the place now, but you know, I kind of there's a moment in my life where it's like I am making new friends, I'm meeting new people. I'm not tied down by just like my slight regrets about how I represented myself, and I'm ready to take my time seriously, take my life and time seriously. And there's been several moments of that in my life, even now. But I remember that being a big shift, and so I want to impress Paul. I want to work hard and like kind of find give people that in my sphere like reason to like admire some traits in me, because I know I have good traits. And so it wasn't long. He offered me the full-time position in the tasting room, which was cool. They obviously wanted to keep me around, and then we started talking about because at that point, the Durants, like, they had been growing since 1973, selling grapes since then, but didn't start making wines until about '03, and were custom crushing it, like basically grapes that they were selling grapes to, or wineries they were selling grapes to, that they'd send a portion to them, like, hey, make some wines for us. And so we had, like, when I was first there, we were making wines through like 5 or 6 different wineries. And it was really cool because it's like, you know, like our Bishop and our La Casito is Isabelle Dutart up at DuPont was making those, and some Chardonnay. You had Chad Stock making some really awesome wines from, like, actually grapes out here, Ava and Olivia Grace Pinot. And so some really talented and cool people. And so that gave me an opportunity, even though I wasn't still working we didn't have a winery here. I wasn't working in production anymore at that point. Some interaction with them, right? And so I kept in the tasting room, really broadened my skills, like, from a perspective of understanding the business side of it, like, you know, had me fascinated with customer service. Like, you know, how do we sell these wines? Why do people buy these wines? And, you know, my dad's not a big talker, and so I always take it as very derogatorily, but he's like, oh, you have the gift for talk, or something like that to me. And I always take it as like an insult a little bit, because he's not a big talker, and so, but I know what he means, like, in terms of, I think he admires. It's cool hearing my dad. I mean, it's something he likes about me. He's like, you know how to talk to people, and so I took advantage of that trait and, like, learned as much as I could. And then in 2017, Paul came to me and started talking to me about, basically, at that point I was kind of considering, like, I want to get back into production, like, I'm considering leaving here. And I was still working on my degree, but I don't know, I was just really craving, and I missed harvest. I worked a bit in the vineyard here during 2016, but I didn't work in a winery, so that I felt like I was really missing out. It was cool seeing a fall, though. Like, like, you know, at that point, like, I hadn't seen fall during the daytime in almost 3 years, because, like, I was working night shift every harvest, 2013 through 2015. And so I worked in the vineyard, but I was kind of thinking about it, like, maybe I should go to another winery. And, like, you know, I met some people. I've started to build a peer group in this industry, you know, meeting some amazing people like Julia Cresto, one of my dearest friends, now over at Alexana, gonna kick ass over there. I'm incredibly lucky to know people like her. And so I met these people during that time, so it became more of like, okay, let's maybe think about that. But Paul approached me and said, hey, like, so we're thinking about building a winery. I was like, oh, please tell more. Interesting. And so there was basically this barn that they used to store. It was just gravel floor, and like where you interviewed Spencer, and it used to be gravel floors. There's like a boat stored in there. We're going to turn this into the winery. And I'm like, okay, like, we'll see. But I still like the idea, because I did like it here at Durant. Like, I really admired Paul, Christina, my friend's sister that was the tasting room manager. I really admired her sort of social intelligence, just like as being a tasting room manager, and just like being a great like purveyor of these wines that we're making. Like, loved working with her. And so I was like, okay, but I really want to work harvest again. Do you think maybe I could go work for one of the wineries that we make wines through? So 2017, I went up to DuPont. I chose DuPont because they're my favorite wines that were being produced. And so I keyed in on this idea that Isabelle would be an awesome person to work under. And that was the first vintage too, where it was like, for a while it had rained. I remember that was kind of a sprinkly fall. So it was a kind of very slow-paced one, but it allowed for opportunity for more conversation and like learning. Isabel and Susie, who was there for a long time, they both were like very hospitable to me and like very helpful. Like I really felt like they trusted me. It was the first time being back in a winery where I felt really trusted and like viewed as being capable, which I think was maybe some almost self-inflicted, but I was still getting over like just like my teenagehood, like Harvest, working at 12th and Maple. Like it was big, and my judgment was not matured. Just little things, but it was just nice like to not like kind of start anew again and then build off of things that I had learned in the past years. So it was a really cool experience. Like Isabel is like she's just a formidable character, and so it was at first a little bit. Actually, no, I don't know. She was really fun to talk to, and like super like forthright with like how she makes wine. I just felt like I had like a treasure chest of knowledge and experience like just opened up right in front of me, and it was just funny. I remember it just to document this story because it's one of the funniest things that, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a TMI. I just remember it because it was two guys that was working that harvest, and obviously it was like a lady cellar. Like this is their zone, and we were just guests in it. And I remember Isabel walks out of the bathroom, and she's like, "Boys, get over here," and she was mad. And she gets mad, and I come up and I'm like, shit, what did I do? Because I think the day before too, I like organized like the storage closet, and she was upset that I organized it, not because I organized it, but because now she can't find anything because I organized it differently than it once was. And she's just like, you guys work with ladies, and when you work with ladies, you don't leave piss all over the toilet seat, because like. And I like was just like, oh my God. And I like look at the other guy, and I was just like, I sit when I pee. And she like, I mean, she was in full rage mode, and I see this smile like crack, and she was like, she's obviously like glaring at both of us, and then she just turns to the other guy, and I'm like, oh God. It was brilliant. And then after that moment, like, she's become one of my favorite people in this industry. Like, I don't know, it was just such a funny moment to like break through. And thank God my mom made sure that I had etiquette. It's not a public toilet, like. But anyway, so yeah, did that 17 vintage with her, and it was just like fruit sampling, like tasting of fermenters, making cap management decisions, because like I at that point was finally like stoked to be on day shift so I could be my early bird self, and would get there sometimes too early. Like, she wasn't stoked that I was there that early, because she will taste through every fermenter and make the cap management decisions based on what she was tasting. It's like a cool process. She did tell me eventually to stop showing up early because it's distracting. Totally get it. But one morning she did kind of give me some insight of like what she's doing and like what she's thinking about. And so it's little moments like that that I like have really stayed with me, because, you know, I have I'll have like my 12th harvest, you know, almost 10 years here at Durant, and I still feel like I'm learning, and it's like it's a lot of experience, and 10 years anywhere is a lot of experience, but it's like, if I like the things that like add up to like the bulk of my understanding of winemaking and my love of winemaking, my, you know, philosophical and scientific love of winemaking, they're built up of like, you know, thousands of tiny moments or conversations that might not even amount to longer than, you know, 20, less than a day worth of information. Like, it's just these moments. And so like, I'm glad I have a good enough memory to like pick those up, you know, and listen, like be cognizant enough to listen to those moments. and just grateful that people like her have had the patience to like stop and do that. And so, in my future, I want to be one of those people, because you're trying to like, well, that's a tangent. It's like my new thought about it, but it's like maybe a kind of a new iteration of this love. Like it's constantly evolving, but it's like for me, like a really important aspect is just like the storytelling aspect. And so like it's a collection of stories. This thing is a collection of stories, and maybe you probably find some nuggets of gold in there if you listen to every single one of them.
Definitely.
Because it's those little stories that I think we learn the most from. And so it's just nice when people like, the point is, it's just nice when people take the moment to like share those stories. And so I want to like, I have the desire, and the patience to take those moments. And I hope I really hope someday I'm in that position to do so for somebody else. Yeah, I mean, like, because I'm turned 30 this year, and the last couple years, we're growing as a winery, and we're getting more interns now because of it. So you meet a lot more people, and like thinking about specifically that one other guy that I mentioned at 12th and Maple that wasn't the full time, that wasn't one of the Rugrats. I started thinking about him a lot, especially in the last 2 years, because I started getting interns that were basically the same age disparity. And it was like a very humbling moment to like interact with that, because I found myself incredibly frustrated sometimes, because it's like, and they don't necessarily think they're doing anything wrong, or they don't like know what the issue is. And I actually, he called me maybe like a couple months ago, because he's working for a cork company now. So it was like kind of, he knew it was me. So he's like, hey, how's it going? I'm working for here now. Like, you want to buy corks? But I took that opportunity, though. I remember to call, like, say, hey, I think I owe you an apology. I mean, it wasn't that serious, but it's just like you're stretching somebody's patience. Like I just wanted to tell him, hey, I learned. I know what I did, because I'm sure he was wondering at the time. They don't even understand why I'm mad at them right now, do they? That's where I'm at now.
After 2017, Durant's working on building a winery.
Yeah.
Talk about that process, and about sort of the role they saw for you.
Finished the vintage with Isabel. Oh yeah, very important thing. Jump back on the airplane. I took a harvest. I was applying throughout harvest. I was like still fielding applications and sending out resumes, but I sought out the need to hit the road and go do a harvest somewhere else. So I applied in New Zealand. I needed to go to the Southern Hemisphere, but I applied in New Zealand, different parts of Australia. But I ended up kind of fielding most of my applications towards the Southern Hemisphere, and it was mostly out of a desire to do something that wasn't Pinot. So I went to the Barossa Valley in the spring of 2018 at this place called Small Gully, and it's like a co-branding. The winery's name is Small Gully, but it's ran by the sons of the original founder, and so there's Joe Black and Charlie Black. Coolest names ever. Yeah. And so Joe, he runs like is the brand that his dad started, Small Gully, and then Charlie runs his personal brand, Mysterious Mr. Black, which is just cool. I remember I still have bottles that I bought there then, and I don't know when I ever want to open them, because they mean a lot to me. But that again was like, so I built that confidence. It's nice like having that first vintage, like kind of getting this confidence in what I'm doing, and then the confidence given to me by somebody like trusting me. And so that vintage in 2018 was like exactly what I needed prior to our winery here at Durant being completed. It was about 500 ton outdoor, like the barrels were the only thing stored inside. The fermenters all outside. I mean, it's obviously South Australia, so it's warm. But there'd be just torrential downpour, and they always joked about it. It's like, that's our 10-part water ad that we needed, because it's like these grapes are coming in at like 28 bricks, just high alcohol bruisers. But it's such a cool place, though. I mean, it's in the middle of this vineyard. Obviously, it was really new to me to be in Australia. I hadn't been there. Had an apartment with a group of guys, one from Spain, Taiwan, and China. Coolest, everything about this experience, I think if I had to sum it up in one word, it would be, I'm actually going to have to think about this, because I want to sum it up in one word. I think it was about competency, I think. That trait has grown to be very important to me. And that November 2023, me and my wife had a baby boy, Gianluca Giovanni Rolleri. That's his name.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think feeding still into this theme of just how important history and identity really is. I think, having that kind of connective tissue just through your name is it's important. So I wanted to give my son this very strong name. But I remember telling my wife, prior to him, I just want my son to be a competent man. That's what I want. I love humor. I'd love for him to be funny, which he really is funny. He's a very funny guy. Actually funny. He's making jokes and he's just learning how to talk. He can do it. Emotes, whatever. But funny, smart. But I think competency is a trait that kind of, it touches in a lot of layers of, I think, being a really well-rounded person, because competency for me describes problem-solving capacity, the ability to interact with something and not know what you're doing, but really find a way to get there. And so 2018, that was where I think I really kind of connected with that idea, because again, kind of, I don't know what it was. They obviously didn't know me, and I got hired as an intern position. I think they hired even somebody else as kind of their, not enologist, sort of intern enologist, doing the lab stuff. But I ended up doing all that, and I had at that point finished enough coursework through Shemeketa's wine program, where I did know my way around the basic chemistry. But it was Vinny, this is what we want you to do. That turned into not just doing a lot of the lab work during harvest, but managing the white wine pressing program. And I hadn't done that before. I knew how to mechanically, because we were running a lot of presses at 12th Maple, mechanically know what's happening, knowing how to strip them apart and clean them and stuff like that. But I really didn't know. So it kind of forced me into this position of being competent and carrying that trust that somebody just gave me a little bit blindly, and not just accomplishing the task, but really exceeding, being successful at it. That trip wasn't just a normal tourist sort of exploring the world kind of thing, finding myself, whatever. It was really about kind of just solidifying myself in my skills in this industry, and now I have something to really work off of. And maybe it took a long route there, but I don't regret it one bit, in terms of going to college first and then get your first internship and stuff. So it's And again, like, I mean, through my process in Chemeketa, I really think it was more fruitful because of the fact that I started off like very ignorant to the process, learned the process physically, and then had these questions in my mind prior to interacting with the coursework and the professors and things like that. Because I mean, I was good in school, in high school, but not great. And I really exceeded beyond what I thought I was capable of and during my college work. So I was really, really happy with how that went. But yeah, so I got back from Australia. And mind you, like too, like coming back to Durant, I really was carrying a wave of like trust and investment in my future a little bit, because I remember Paul, like before it was like my last day before I left, and he's like, hey, before you leave, meet me at the tasting room. So I went over there and he handed me this envelope of cash, and he's like, that's your your bail money in Australia. So my boss just like unsolicitedly hands me a wad of cash just for like spending money and like going to Australia. And so it's like that, like carried that wave over. It's like, wow, they care about what I'm doing and they want me back. They want me here. And then going to Australia and really absorbing like a sponge from all sorts of, I mean, I have like things that they said, that Joe and Charlie had said to me, like coming through my head all the time. In a lot of ways, I wish I stayed there. Not because I regret any part of this journey. I'm glad I took this path, especially like for the sake of me and my wife. Like it's like our story is intertwined in all my choices, you know. And so, but I mean, they like I still dream about being in Australia sometimes. Like just in my house, I'm like waking up for work, and it was 3 months, 8 years ago. It's such a weird thing, but I really, really appreciated that whole experience. But like, you know, little things like Charlie would always say, like, you can't eat ham sandwiches or bologna sandwiches every day, which I still don't know what it means, but I still think about it and like try to get to the bottom of what it means. But like from a perspective of winemaking, like Joe would say, like, you know, I don't remember it verbatim, but it was something along the lines of, you know, because we were talking about Pinot Noir, and like he's like, it's not my preference, and he's like, you know, so like you kind of don't want to lose yourself a little bit to like the austere, like, and I think about that just from the perspective of how I make wine, like Pinots, or how I'm interacting, or what I want to come out of the flavor of Pinots, right? Like, you know, he's making obviously Shiraz, and like these brews are Shiraz, but I think he had a perspective that I think too is probably very important to the customers that are buying wine, which is just like a really austere, pretty, like elegant, like, you know, soft, but like has some secrets to whisper style of wine, you know. They're nice, but you gotta give it some flavor. Like you need to give it some juice. And I think that's what he was kind of like, where his head was at, is like, it needs to have some substance. Like people want that. People want flavor. I mean, like a lot of wines, you want to keep a little bit of sugar in there because people kind of like it. And it's like, you know, there is some amazing wines that are made in all different forms. And so, I don't know, I really liked things like that. Little things that he just said to me one day, you know. So, yeah, coming back into it, like you said, I was kind of riding a little bit of a wave of just knowing that, like, I succeeded there. Like, that was worth my time. I had time to think about my future. That was where I decided I was going to propose to my wife. At that point, she was living in Ashland, going to OHSU for nursing down there. So we had been, we did, so like I said, we met when we were like 16. So 16, I think she was like 19. Because I'm like just shy of a year older than her. She had like basically, like that was, we knew she was going to school for nursing, but it ended up being the best fit to go to Ashland. And so we spent 3 years long term, and like we did that. Like and we really did good. Like, I'm really proud of like the maturity, like an experience of exhibiting maturity to get through that. And that's little things like that just has helped me like accelerate, like kind of be, I don't know, be competent in my experiences, you know, my processes and my career. But so I get back, and I remember walking into the winery space because a lot of work had gotten done with it, and it was like the gravel was gone. It was now concrete, new drains, and it was very exciting for me. And so at that point, I talked a little bit about Paul and his influence up to that point, up to 2018 in my life. And, you know, Spencer got to Durant, like, I think it was maybe the end of 2017, end of summer of 2017. So we had gotten to know each other really well, a little bit well. You know, it was kind of like one of the weird things too, because like Paul told me about my future role, or promised me a future role in his future winery before we had a future winemaker. So basically me and Spencer's first impression of each other was me excited to meet the guy that I'm going to be making wines with, and him meeting the guy who just hired him, already told he's going to be working with you. Like, you already got a guy. Sorry. And so there's a lot of trust on his part to kind of see how good I'd be. But again, like, I think we walked into that 2018 vintage. We did 90 something tons. Just the two of us. And not only that, build like trust and like kind of, you know, getting to know each other through harvest, but like, I was able to kind of ride that wave of like, I'm doing this. This is what I'm going to do this well, and I believe in my capacity to make good wines. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to do this. And like, I think since then it's just like kind of like this is our 9th year together doing a harvest together, or 8th year. I can't remember. It's 2018. So yeah, 8th. Yeah. So me and Spencer have been working together a long time, and it's like cool being anywhere for a really long time, because you become comfortable, but it's not like that term of, I don't know, you just you have a shorthand for it, and I think that kind of helps get past the noise. Because it's a noisy process, not just literally, but like, you know, it's there's a lot of distractions.
Tell me about the growth process for you as in that role. Obviously, you mentioned this is your 8th vintage with Spencer, 8th vintage in the building. Yeah. Tell me about what have been the biggest sort of growth moments for you, challenges, developments for you as you have kind of grown into the role.
Yeah. So. So my current, I like to put it like my resume, I guess, on record. Currently, it's like my job position's assistant winemaker and production logistics manager. What that means is that I have to wear a lot of hats. And that's why I really, at this point, am just in love with being here, and why, as the code of the West dictates, you must ride for the brand. I really believe in what we're doing here. And so how did I get there? You know, basically it became like me and Spencer, like we did 2 vintages of just by ourselves. Then we'd hire 1 intern, then 2 interns 1 year. And now we're up to like 4 interns with the production size we're doing. But, you know, it's still a small scale winery, so at the most we're doing like 130 tons. At the minimum we're doing 100 tons. So that leaves some time throughout the year to fill, you know. It's like I can only top the barrel so many times and things like that. And so I think it became apparent that I was there's a lot going on in this winery. And, I had a lot of experience at the tasting room. And so that became kind of like, I became a little bit of a bridge between the winery and the tasting room now, because I had that familiarity with that space and those people. So it became a little bit of a bridge there. But I wasn't working, obviously. I think I worked for a while, like, just to kind of fill time. But I worked in the tasting room like 1 or 2 days a week, and then in the winery. But then I expressed interest to Paul, like, I want to know more. Like, let's get into the nitty gritty of it, kind of thing. In 2016, I did that harvest, kind of helping out in the vineyard a little bit. But he's like, well, why don't you do pruning? And so for the next 3 years, every year, that was part of my schedule. Like during the winter time, January through, we'll usually finish at the end of February, early March, like pruning, like every day. And one day a week I'd be at the winery, like doing like topping or any small wine movements. But at that point, everything is asleep, like post-harvest. So there's not much to do in that space. So I was really just absorbing into the vineyard throughout the year. Like, shoot positioning, I was there doing that. Like, and so that was kind of my next stage of like just understanding the process of this continual organic relationship, between the land and the fermenter to the bottle to the customer. And so that was like about 3 years. And then, Paul asked me because we obviously have the olive mill, if I wanted to be involved in that. I said, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do it. And he's like, okay, we'll have to see how it works out with harvest. But basically, it works out pretty much every year, where it's like by the time things are in barrel at the winery, the olive fruit starts coming in. And so it started out with me just helping outside, like just basically dumping bins and stuff like that. And then it became me like training on like running the mill, like operating the equipment. And now that's become my creative outlet. It's like at the winery, I'm still very much involved with it, but ultimately it's Spencer's wine. He's earned that right. Like, those are his. This is his vision. And I'll have my input in there, but it's not my role to implement his vision and like improve it, but not amend it. You know what I mean? Improve it in the sense of like, not make it better than what he did, but just like by my own, again, my ability to implement it competently. Like, it's like, he can't do everything by himself. So I need to do it as well as he would do it himself. Right. And so I love that relationship with him, because we are both attempting to do the same thing, which is make some great wines and fun wines, and like have fun while we're like, doing basically like my childhood dream, and like something that he's been loving doing for the last 20 plus years. But for me, like the creative artistic aspect is very important. And so now being involved in the mill, in the sense of like, basically Paul has given me so much trust and so much steering capacity. I mean, to like, it's pretty incredible. And again, it's just like, I'm constantly like just humbled and like appreciative of the trust that people can kind of still do, because I think there's a lot of like, there could always be a lot of like ladder climbing and like, gatekeeping. I think it happens everywhere in every industry. And so it's just like, I've been so lucky to like run into people that are like, want to involve and advance everybody and hold that, what I learned hanging out at Flag and Wire is like what got this industry going. It was that all boats float sort of mentality, and helping others, encouraging others, and teaching others too. And occasionally you'll meet people that don't have that mentality, but as of the chaff and the wheat, it's get separated eventually. So I'm just very lucky and humbled and appreciative to Paul for allowing me into that. And so the mill has become my creative output of, designing new oils, like learning about olive oil too. It's like still such a young industry for the United States. I mean, it's like some of the bigger guys in California, like it's like maybe 30 years old, and like you try to look up research papers on it, and it's like pretty slim. And so like modern applications of olive milling, it's still developing. And so it's a completely different chemistry than winemaking. So I can't 100% say that like winemaking is like helped me be a better miller, but I mean, it's certainly it's like somewhat participated, but it's like a lot that I had to learn from scratch and like rethink principles like filtration, like, you're not filtering out particles like you would out of wine. You're like trying to remove the water, basically using the filter to absorb water. It's little things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, my role has like found me like basically now bridging the gap between, like, it'd be so much easier if it was just like as like a silo, I guess. Wouldn't be easier, it'd be just different, but it just like bridging the gap between the vineyard and the mill and the winery and the tasting room. And it's like a very unique position to be in any enterprise of any size. Yeah, it just makes me feel very lucky and happy. And again, like, I think taking some seriousness around that idea of being competent and listening and accepting information when it's presented to you, and like being mindful enough to take it. Where do I go? Like, I think now it kind of feels like I don't know, there's a lot has changed, like thinking back about this, my past and stuff like that. It's like, okay, it's like, feels like I've met my 5-year goal, a while ago, and that feels so good. It's like, now I need to make a new one. And so, obviously, like, naturally I've been thinking about the future, and it just really comes down to, amongst my peers, we talk about, there's a new guard of people. So you see new faces, or at least now you're starting to consistently see the same faces that are all in your same age group, right? So people are now expanding on stuff that other people have already built. I'm walking into this with like this shift in time with like an intense amount of respect and admiration for why these institutions were built, and like what it took to get there. And so that's why it's like, I guess the ongoing theme is just like history is like important, that all boats float sort of thing. I want those things to continue. And so I just try to bring it up in my like day-to-day of how I work and how I plan my life. And that, when you're talking to your peers about it, it's like everyone's kind of growing and developing, and like, like I said, expanding on other like stuff that were already built, and so, yeah, just constantly reminding myself like of how I got there and like what they did right, kind of thing. Because I'm, like I said, like, I'm in a unique situation where it's like, obviously I've intertwined myself a little bit with the future of Durant. I tried my best to, because I do care about it. And I also feel lucky to like be in that unique situation. So I'm gonna make the most of it, make the best of it.
What have you not done yet in wine that you want to do? Or in olive oil, I suppose.
Well, it's not like a very specific answer, but I think the honest answer is just to kind of have the opportunity to kind of like create that creative outlet that I like have found myself with the olive oil. Get that chance of storytelling through the wine that I've like kind of craved.
Does that mean a side project on your own?
Maybe. I just know the economics of it still worries me, you know, and that's why it's like the easier, like to those two questions, like I have an easier time answering the oil one because it's so exciting and so new, and it's very obvious people like talk about it and care about it somewhat in the same way that, maybe not the same exact way, but I don't know. It's like, let's go look at looking at the dinner table at my, like, let's say I'm at my Nona's house. Like, it's like she makes the tortelli, delicious pasta dish. There's the bottle of wine, but there's also always the bottle of olive oil too. So there's somewhat this connection. They like scratch maybe a similar itch that right now I'm not gonna like spend too much time thinking of the word that would describe that, but people care about it, and they appreciate quality when it's there, you know. And so I think for like the olive oil, like my hope is to kind of like take my opportunity and like create a venue for experimentation, because there's some experimentation to be done, like some playing, you know, whether it's through branding or like, you know, I really like the idea of like, you know, capitalizing on people's interest in learning about the process like they do with wine, and almost involve, you know, we do little things like, we're doing a grape crushing thing, you know, come out and crush some grapes with your feet. Not quite like that, but, you know, it involves them in the process and like captures their imagination and their senses and their minds with those process. And I really am interested in figuring out a way to do that through olive oil, because obviously I'm not going to let them use the really expensive piece of equipment to make olive oil, but, you know, whether that's through like giving them something, you know, like giving them an olive oil that kind of captures that through its branding or its storytelling. You talk about side projects, like I think that for wine, like it's kind of always been in my like little mental notebook or journal. It's like the idea of like if I did start a wine brand, like for me it'd be the storytelling. I know everyone talks about storytelling in their branding, and it's pretty cliche at times, but like people don't want to, I guess I don't want to know about just like how wet it was that year, you know. It's like they're like personal stories, you know, like you know, like in like I made a carbonic Pinot a couple years ago just for fun, like, you know, it turned out really good. I made it like, I mean, sounds like blasphemy, but I made like a really killer sangria for my 4th of July party this year, with like, yeah, because I had all this wine that I just made and we're not drinking it, so there was like 2 cases worth. It was great. But that was a year that my grandmother had passed, and so I don't know. It's like there's got to be a way to do it that's not like this cliche, ethereal storytelling aspect. It's like very like I imagine like you know, family crests and things like that. Like we go back to names, like why I named my son Gianluca. It's like it's so he can, when he introduces himself, it's like this idea of like identity of where his grandfather, my dad, came from, and like people lose that connection very easily, and it's not because they don't care about it or they don't know. It's just, I don't know, it's not there's no daily reminders, and I don't know, I'm blabbering because it's definitely a half-baked idea. I just, it means a lot to me, I guess, and I just am probably going to spend the next 10 years at least. Maybe that's my next 5-year plan. There's just one light item is like figure out what I mean by there needs to be storytelling in wine.
Maybe start stocking up on Welch's organic grape juice now.
I just need to go back to this where it started.
Welch's in yeast in a closet.
Yeah, I used to always, that we used specifically when we got really tuned in to how to do it right. We would use champagne yeast because you could yield the highest alcohol content with the champagne yeast. It was just stronger. I think it was just basically EC 1118, but yeah, it's just like it could take it much further, and then we'd freeze distill it. But yeah, I think now it's like expanding on my roles, just not as like a I don't have any intention on leaving here. I mean, like you said, I mean, I'm from McMinnville, and I've gone to so many different places. I think I went back to Italy at least 3 times, like in between this whole story, in between the one time that I mentioned it, you know, and I went places, but I don't have any intention of like permanently leaving. Maybe even Durant, but this area, because this is like home, and the stories of the people that make up this environment and care about this community and this industry. It's like I want to be a part of that, and I want to expand on it, and you know, take that trust that I was given and run with it, you know, because you don't just get, it's not something that's freely given ever. And so, you know, and that creates like a space for my family, you know, like I said, I have a son now, and it's like, it gives him a venue to explore his senses, like whether he wants to be a winemaker or an olive oil maker or not, like it keeps him in touch with something. And so it's like, that's just try to be happy, and these are all, it's not just a job, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's all the questions I have. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything I didn't ask that I should have?
I'm sure I did, but it's okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing story with us, for sharing this beautiful space with us, and congratulations on Gianluca and all your recent successes. And going to let you off the hook.
Okay.
Thank you.